Okay, now we're going into the interior of our round layer haircut. So we're gonna begin by parting a profile part from forehead to nape. And then once they get that part in there, then they're gonna take a 1/2 inch on each side of that part so that they can end up with a 1 inch radial. So this is a way for them to learn how to do that in the beginning. If you're more experienced, then you can usually just do a 1 inch profile without that center part. So we want to maintain the rest of this hair and clip it out of the way. Students need to see their lines clear. Clean sectionings are going to give you a better haircut. So I'm going to take another 1/2 inch on either side, the other side of that profile, and clip the rest of it out of the way. So now I have a 1 inch profile part from forehead to nape, and clip everything else out of the way. So we're gonna, if you're right-handed, you're gonna stand on the right side of the mannequin, and you're gonna go through and we're gonna take our front guide that we cut previously, and we're gonna cut it all the way through the back. Now, if you're worried about students cutting the crown too short, which often that happens, you could come in here and cut another little cheater guide. So I can measure this at the front, then I'll come right at the top of the crown and cut a cheater guide here. That way they have something to aim for. So if I hold all this hair up, you can kind of see, or the student can hold this piece up and this piece up, and then they can draw a visual. I can even put my comb there and show them how that's gonna look, but it will round to the head shape. So let's first of all, be sure you hold this straight out 90 degrees from the head shape. Do not cut this perimeter guide. Let that drop a little bit and cut. And on this big of a round, you don't want them to cut more than 1 inch at a time. So measure, cut. If they cut all the way through, you're gonna get a flattened haircut. And we want this to be rounded to the head shape. So measure, cut. Take a 1/2 inch out, add another inch to it, measure, cut. Now I should be evening up right here. See how I'm rounding that? And then I evened up with that guide I cut in there. I'm gonna continue to work down. If students start with their guide and cut down, they're gonna be more successful. Measure, cut. Hold this out 90 degrees from the head shape. Still, I'm only cutting about 1 inch at a time. Take a 1/2 inch out or 1 inch and add another one. I like to hold a little more hair than I cut, just so I can see where I'm going. Now, I teach the students to kind of bend their back, which is not real ergonomic, and I keep their head upright just so they understand where the projection's coming from. They don't understand enough about, okay, the head's forward, I gotta think about it, how am I gonna cut it? So when I first teach this, they have to keep the head upright. Measure and cut, and then I should be coming down and end up right on that perimeter guide at the end. So if I could put an air hose in her mouth and blow all this hair straight off her head, you see I'm picking up a few from the other side, then I could see that this would be uniform all the way around the head shape. So once I finish that, I will go back and part that down the middle, re-put my profile part in, so I have guide on each side of the head. So now that I have the hair in 2 sections again, I'm gonna come in and we're gonna put a radial section through here, from the crown down to behind the ear. So I will take this hair and I'll start at the top in the crown, not the apex. That won't give us a uniform layer and sectioning. So I'm gonna come back to where my pivot is gonna be. And I can draw a part first and then take a 1/2 inch on either side, or you can work them to where they can just take a 1 inch radial part. So at this point in time, I like them to go ahead and clip everything else off, so you as a teacher can see that section clearly from across the room. Do they have it through the crown up to behind the ear? Same thing on this side. Take a 1 inch radial, clip everything else out of the way. Okay, so now, as you see, I have this 1 inch radial parted off from the crown down to behind the ear. So when I begin cutting this, I'm going to cut, if I'm right-handed, on the left-hand side. I have my guide here, but one thing that's a little different, the way we cut the perimeter, is we left this longer so we didn't get a bi-level cut through here. So I'd like a student to hold everything up and see where's that guide and where's this guide. So we're gonna cut this 90 down to the parietal, and then I'm gonna elevate this up and have over direction so that I do not cut a hole in my perimeter. So start here, and I really want to take small cuts. If I whack all that off in one piece, then I'm going to lose the rounded 90 effect. So I stop here, I'm at my parietal ridge, take half of that out. So now this last one, I'm going to hold it up. Do you see the guide there? And my guide here at the bottom. So it almost looks like rounded, and it has a little bell shape. But I go ahead and have them over direct that up. And then there is my guide at the bottom. You see that? So I'm not cutting off my perimeter, and that way I don't leave a hole at the ear. So we're gonna turn the mannequin around so I'm standing in front of her so I can continue cutting down. And I would have my students measure each cut they make, because this is the guide throughout the whole haircut. So we spend a little more time on this, and the rest of the haircut is very simple, because all we're doing is matching everything up to the time we spent on the guides. So now I'm right at my parietal ridge area. I elevate this upward. Do you see my guide right here? And then I'm just gonna lift it, over direct that up. So this last below the parietal ridge is not at 90. It is over directed upward, up and out. So once I finish this, I'm gonna go back and part that down the center to put a little guide in each section. So think about the 4 quadrants here for a minute. If you really look at your quadrants, they kind of look like a triangle. So we spent the time on these guides, but if you really look at this like a triangle, I have a guide here on this side of the triangle, a guide here, and a guide here on the bottom. So when we go back and start the layers on the next step, all we're doing is cutting what is in the middle, because I have a guide outlining that whole quadrant.